This week we talked to Brad Wendes, who has made a career out of parkour. And for those of you that don't know what it is, you should definitely look it up. I'm all about getting some adrenaline through sport, but I would not do this. I would break so many bones. But he has been very successful in it. He started Team Kinetics and later the Kinetics Academy. He's also competed Britain's Got Talent and was in the semifinals of Ninja Warrior. All of that being said, he is humble to what he's accomplished because he sees so much more for those that are going to come after him. He is very much so about investing in the youth and try to make his kids' life a little bit better by making everybody's life a little bit better and a little bit kinder. Now, his success didn't come without trials and tribulations because anybody that knows anybody that has been successful, typically that does come with some hardships. Through this interview, Brad winds down the different roads and the different hardships that he's had to experience and how he was able to find the grit just to keep freaking going. But without leading too much into it, I'll shut up and here is Brad.
How old's your little one?
11.
Oh,
that's crazy.
okay.
Yeah. But you have a young girl too, right?
I got a little girl, a little 3-year-old upstairs.
Yeah. That's a good age.
It is. I walk through the door and and she comes and gives me a big hug. And yeah, that's a good age. It's a good age.
Super excited about everything. And they just are so visual with their love. They're just like, I love you. You're like, thanks.
Yeah, thanks. Give me a cuddle. Okay. Yeah, sure. So what made you decide to start the podcast? Sorry, I'm interviewing you here, but I've watched a lot of your stuff and I'm like, it's interesting, but it's like, I was just wondering on the why.
It started with friends and honestly, so many friends dying or something happening to them. And that's always doing that thing where it's like, hey, we'll catch up. Hey, we'll do something. And I was like, I just want to sit and talk to people for an hour and actually get to know the stories. And then in law enforcement, we have to be silent about so much stuff. So it was nice to retire from that and then actually get to say things and not be so confidential with not so much the material, but like our feelings about things. Because it's so very much so just keep going. And we've had so many traumatizing events. We just kind of wanted to say it exists.
Yeah. And again, in watching your stuff, like I'm not a serviceman. Like my experiences are my experiences. My hat's off to anyone who, in uniform service. There's a big difference between ending up in a difficult situation and deliberately putting yourself in a difficult situation.
Well, it's fun too in ways. So we definitely had some twisted fun, but it's I feel like sport, which is why I was excited to have you on, is because we do sister up to sport a lot because that's where I came from, a sporting background, and we've had some coaches and stuff on here. Yes. So I try to bring up grit because I feel like that's also what kind of comes up in law enforcement and everything as well. It's just, hey, who has the grit to keep going with the stuff? And I feel like it sisters up to sport quite a bit. Yeah.
And actually that's a big thing that I do is I talk a lot about like resilience because that's been my journey, and what you can achieve if you just don't quit. And I think that's so important. Like the people that have been successful, the people that are still there are the people that just carried on through the shit. Yep. And that's where we're at. Yeah. But like, where do you want to start? What do you want to go for?
Yes, well, I want to make sure I say your last name correct. It is Wendes, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
That's right.
All right.
It's actually, I think it's a misspelling of like a Northern European name. There's only about 19 of us in the world. And there's a couple in the States, but not many. Like I did some ancestry checking, I think.
See, I thought my name was unique, but it is not. There's 1,000 of me, so congratulations.
Sadly, there's going to be a lot more Teslas on there.
I know. And now it comes with a connotation. Before, it was just an inventor. Oh, well, can't help it.
Yeah. I mean, probably not something to dwell on, but US politics at the moment is fascinating. I mean, international politics at the moment is fascinating. This is the week that Prince Andrew got arrested. We haven't had a member of the royal family arrested in 400 years, and the last one had his head chopped off.
Well, because you've evolved. Sometimes I feel like we're regressing, and every day I wake up, I'm like, is this stuff really happening right now?
I mean, we get it twice. So we wake up in the morning, we're like, what wacky shit's going on in England? And then like mid-afternoon, we're like, oh, what's going on over the pond?
I'm like, can I just like opt out of all of this for a little bit?
Yeah. It's an interesting time. Like, history books are going to study this shit. Really.
I know. I feel like, well, and to kind of segue into it, 9/11 really kicked off our generation pretty good. And then, it's just doesn't stop.
I mean, we must be a similar age, right? I'm 42. I'm 43 this year.
So, same.
So April I turned 43. So it's not even that long. I got like 2 months. Yeah. So in 9/11 we were 18.
Yeah. I was in high school when it was going on.
that's kind of, I think some of the one of the pivotal points of our generation is that we've had like crisis after drama after international shit going on for our entire adult lives, started by 9/11 when we turned 18. And that's it. I was traveling away. I'd done a Camp America program, and I flew out to New York on my own at 18. And 18, you think you know everything. Now looking back, I'm like 18, I didn't know anything. And they're on an airplane going to New York. It's like one of the biggest, like longest flights I'd ever done, sitting on my own. And I worked out in upstate New York for the whole of the summer. I went out in June with the summer finished, and we had a bit of traveling time. And I was living in Manhattan, just staying in hotels and staying with friends and meeting all the people you'd worked with all summer. And as luck would have, I got a photo of myself at the top of the World Trade Center on the 7th of September, 2001.
What?
Yeah. And we didn't have smartphones or anything like that. And a couple of my friends like, hey, do you want to go down to Florida? I was like, yeah. So we just got on a flight and we flew down to West Palm Beach it would have been the 9th. So I was down there for a couple of days, and like my mum frantically phoning me first thing in the morning. I'm in bed. I'm like, what do you want? What do you want? And then phone's gone dead. And then I got this text message saying, oh, they've hit the Pentagon now. I'm like, what the hell's going on? I turn on the TV just in time to see the second tower fall. I'm like, shit. I'm 18 years old. I'm in a foreign country that's under attack. What the hell? And that was one of those, like, again, just going back to like these repeating themes through life. It's just about not quitting. So I was like, well, my ticket is an open-ended return, but I have to fly back from either JFK or Newark. I have to fly back from New York. I can't fly back from anywhere else. None of my cards work because credit cards didn't work on the. So I ate an entire lettuce because that was what I had in the fridge of the hostel we're staying in, and half a block of cheese. That was my food. And went to try and get a Greyhound ticket back to New York. And the woman's like looking at me like, absolutely no way. I was like, just give me the ticket. Just sell me the ticket. She's like, state lines are closed. We can't leave Florida. Okay, fine. So we've like got on the bus and got up to the border. And by the time we got to the border, the state lines were open. Okay. And the bus driver said, we're going through DC. There is no way we're going to be able to go through DC. And it would have been like middle of the night. And we got into Washington, DC and went to change buses. And all of the changes were like hours. They just kicked you off the bus, sitting on the sidewalk, waiting for the next bus. And they're like, there's no way we're going to get onto Manhattan. It's just not going to happen. I said, well, just take me as far north as you can. And so, got up to, and we were among like one of the first cohorts of vehicles allowed back onto Manhattan Island. I remember going across the bridge. I can see it clear as day now, just looking south at where the towers were. And there's a smoke plume just gradually drifting north where these towers were. It's like, Jesus. And I think my grandmother said to me, oh, did you go and see the devastation? I was like, you have no idea like what's going on. Like I was very, very fortunate to be traveling and to like be away. And there's so many stories of 9/11. I've got friends who are like, oh, we were going to go down there that day, but I overslept, or we decided to go to a museum instead. And they had no idea what was going to be on. It was a scary time. I was 18 with no money and like no cards. I had to borrow some money off a friend to buy my Greyhound ticket. And I flew home from JFK on the 16th of September, 2001. As the safest flight I was ever going to get on ever in the world. There was a pilot was stood at the door and the captain was stood at the door, and they had like a board saying captain's discretion. If he says no, you're not getting on. I was like, okay, fair enough.
Really? I did not know that happened.
Yeah. And it's just pilot's discretion. And that's when so flying out to New York in 2001 was a lovely flight. My parents could come to the gate and wave me goodbye and just breeze through security. And then flying home, well, that heightened security has never gone away, ever. You still have to put your flip-flops through the x-ray machine and get frisked 4 times. And I get it, I do get it. But it just adds to like that heightened level of fear that we live in all the time. And that seems to have been like, particularly through our adult lives, just the thing, like it's always be scared of this, be worried about that. And I think there's a lot of kids that are like not spreading their wings, that are not going out and doing things because we just live in fear all the time. It's just rammed down our throats. Sorry, I got on a rant there.
I mean, even now being parents, it's hard to relinquish some of that control, right? But you have to, because that's kind of the goal of having a kid, is for them to go out on their own and do their own thing. But I couldn't imagine my kid being there at 18 and doing that. I would be freaking out.
Yeah.
So.
I'm desperately, I do dangerous things. I've done dangerous things. And now I've got a little girl who wants to run around and climb on things. And I have to like check myself and be like, no, she's got to fall over. She's got to climb on things. She's got to, she's got to play. Otherwise she'll just never, I mean, I'm fortunate. She's a powerhouse. She runs around. She is full of energy. She climbs stuff. She runs and jumps. It's great. She'll do it in a princess dress, but she's still running and jumping and rolling around the mud. And we've got to encourage that, because like all I can do for her, the best I can do for her, I can't be with her for her entire life. So I have to make sure she's strong enough to exist in the world on her own.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's where maybe our generation fails a little bit, because again, we do overly protect a lot, and it's like, no, look, it's important to fail, because otherwise they're not going to know the feeling. They're not going to know what it's like to actually get back up on their own.
Yeah, and you don't want them to suffer, but there's a certain strength that comes from failing and getting back up, and you can be there so it doesn't hurt too bad. But yeah, they have to experience. They have to learn resilience. Otherwise, they won't be able to take whatever the board's going to throw at them.
Well, speaking of falling and stuff, I do want to bring up parkour, because I obviously came from a sport in swimming, very conventional, right? You go to college, you might make Olympic trials, Olympics, all that other good stuff. But I feel like parkour is sport on a totally unconventional route, which takes a whole other level of grit, because I don't feel like you guys have level of, I don't want to say maintenance, but I feel like a lot of sports, it's like, hey, you have to go to this practice, you have to do that in parkour. And maybe it's different where you are, because I know that you have a gym on your own, but I feel like it has to be a very self-motivated sport.
Yeah, it's getting better. Like it's always getting more standardized. Parkour in the United States is like a very different animal to parkour in Europe. Like parkour in Europe is still a bit feral and street-based, and there's a lot of gyms in the United States, which is great. And there's a lot of standardization. They've got competition formats. The North American Parkour League are doing great things. There's a lot of strength and conditioning, and it's being treated like a proper sport. It is a proper sport. But whereas
finally getting recognized as a proper.
But I think sport and the industry behind sport in the United States is again quite different to Europe. Like the money that's involved in college football and how much money is involved in like being a participant in sport and the sponsorship of sport and it being an industry, even down to like the way the governing bodies insure things out there and the way that insurance works for like sporting injuries and things, which is just very different to Europe. And I think it's probably best not dwell too long on that. But really, parkour was just a bunch of French guys jumping around. Like, yes, there's more to it than that, but it was the easiest way of describing the origins of parkour would be if you never had to be an adult and do adult stuff, and you just carried on playing and climbing trees and jumping off walls. By the time you got into your mid-late 20s, you'd be really good at it. And that's basically what these guys were. They had they were talking about having the mindset of the warrior, and they would hang each other off high things by their ankles to show they trusted their brothers, and it was cool. But really, it came from being in a really underprivileged part of Paris, a really poor suburb during a recession. So as they grew up, there were no jobs, and they just sat around smoking weed, jumping on stuff, and eventually got really, really good at jumping on stuff. And the original French guys, the Yamakaze and David Bell and Sébastien Foucan, who are all like 10 years older than us, or a little bit more for some of them, but they're now, in their mid-50s. And they got noticed because it was about the time the internet was becoming a thing, and some of their videos went viral. They ended up doing like TV shows and getting contracts with Luc Besson to make a whole series of films. They did District 13, Sons of the Wind as well. There's a French film, like absolutely superb and amazing things. They started sending DVDs to Hollywood to try and get themselves noticed. And some of them did, and some of them didn't know. Sébastien Foucan was in the opening to the Casino Royale Bond movie. That's massive. You don't get much bigger than the opening of a Bond movie. And they've had the staying power, and they are still doing things, but I think some of them thought they were bigger than they were. Like the world of entertainment is a fickle mistress. If you're not the next thing, you're the last thing. And they've done some amazing things, as we all have. Like people in my generation doing parkour, we've traveled the world, we've done crazy things, and now I'm here in my little 3-bedroom detached house with my little girl. But yeah, but being British, we took this like French guys jumping on and off of stuff and really exciting action sport, and we're British. What do? We standardize it. We want paperwork. We want insurances. We want and that's what we did. So we were the first country to get recognized as a sport formally, and we developed syllabuses and insurances and all this kind of stuff. Everything's nicely risk assessed, and because that's what the British people do. We had a governing body, and I was involved in writing the first coaching standards for it. And
Wow.
not having like a solid syllabus. The coaching exams were quite tough because you can't possibly write down every single way a human body can move, and people are going to do new stuff all the time. So we did like families of movement, and then how we teach them, how we coach them. And the whole plan, like you pointed out, is like to make your athletes autonomous. You don't want your athletes to rely on your coach. You want to teach them to be as safe as they can, skilled as they can, so that they can then go and, refine their own toolbox and make up things that I've never even thought of. So that's kind of where it differs from a lot of traditional sports. Yeah, I've always gone down performance sport rather than competitive sport. And again, it can be a divisive subject when you talk to people about non-competitive sport. We're not talking participation trophies and everyone wins. That's not it at all.
Yeah.
It's like you as a person against a really fucking hard challenge, like a really hard challenge. And if you fail that challenge, it could hurt or worse. So you've still got that grit, you've still got that challenge, but it's not you against another person. It's you against something hard that you've got to face. And that's the difference. And some people, I'm a big advocate of combat sports when it comes to building resilience. Team sports build teamwork and camaraderie. There's lots of benefits to it, but some people will buckle under me toe to toe with another person. You look at boxing matches, and boxing matches are won and lost in the weigh-in a lot of the time. It's just whoever believes they can win. Whereas you get a person against a challenge, and they can build up to it, and they can do it in their own pace. And there's still failure. Failure is important. We've got to learn from failure, but you're not winning at someone else's cost. You're winning or losing at your own cost. And that's kind of what we bring into our coaching.
So how did you get into it to start? I know that you got to go on to Britain's Got Talent.
Yes.
I did Google that old video, and I was like, oh, look at that.
Yeah.
How did you fall into that? Did you just train a lot before then, and you kind of figured out it was your niche?
It was, falling in is the right way. So after 9/11, I came home for 6 months, and I was like thinking, what do I want to do? Because in my mind, I was going to move to New York, and I was going to live there. I was going to stay there. I didn't want to come home. And then, towers went down. That changed that. So I went back out to New York.
Why? Why did it change your mind?
Funny thing. So I went back out in June 2002 with a lot of the same people I worked with before. And I worked on that camp for 3 years. And then, so by 2003, I came home. And I loved floating up and down the East Coast. And I loved doing the hostels and exploring. And I got some great adventures, scuba diving in Florida and traveling all up and down the country. I didn't feel like I had anything more to do there. Like I'd done what I set out to do, and it hadn't stuck. So I came home and didn't really know what I was going to do. But I did gymnastics previously for a lot of years, like performance gymnastics. I performed in front of the royal family by the time I was 12 years old. And a big part of that was tied to my school. So it cost us £1 a week. Imagine that. Imagine doing like high level sport, but it costs you like $1.25 a week to train.
No, yeah. No way. No. Swimming is very expensive. I don't know how my parents did it.
Exactly. So I was really fortunate that my school happened to have a gymnastic team that you could attend as part of going to that high school. And so I traveled around the country, and I got a feel for doing performances. And that's like I came from a working class background. My dad was a builder, mum worked as a bank teller. We didn't have any money growing up. We didn't go on holiday. So my adventures were going on trips with the gymnastic team, and we do shows, and parents got involved, and that was my childhood. So when I came back from the States, I was like, what do I want to do? Just bought a skateboard and went skateboarding because, what else did you do at 21? So and I know the skate park, and I saw some guys jumping around. So I went and did a flip, and they were like, oh, wow, that's cool. We do parkour. I was like, what's that? So I took them to a gymnastic gym, and they took me into London to meet the other free runners, the parkour guys. And that was it. I was hooked. I was like, wow, this is weird that I was 21 and I was one of the older people getting involved in it at the time. So being a bit older, you kind of take on a position of leadership. I had some coaching experience, a lot of coaching experience for someone who's 21. And that was it. I just got invited onto Britain's Got Talent in 2007. It was the first year that show didn't exist before.
Really? Wow.
And we had no idea what to expect at all. Ended up on the live shows. 9 million people watched it, which in the UK is quite a big viewing. Like that's a lot of people. That was the performance career. So started doing shows. We did like the Russian finance minister's wedding. That was a good show, like all off the back of this thing. That's how I got the job with Wolverine and ended up in Chicago. I mean, I was working in Chicago one year. It was such a shame I was on my own, but I was in Chicago for St. Patrick's Day. I was like, oh, I just wish my friends were here. I wish my friends were here.
I was going to say, it's a great city if you're there during the right time and the right places.
Yeah, I saw the river was green. I was like, what the hell's going on? Yeah. And then went around to Grand Rapids because Wolverine, Caterpillar, have a tannery up in Grand Rapids, and we were up there. I got snowed in, so I ended up staying there for a week longer than I was supposed to, and all expenses paid. You know, there was a point I was sitting in a jacuzzi in Portugal at this golf resort with two of my best friends, with this waitress service, because we're doing a show at some fashion show. We had to do a couple of backflips, and I'm like, guys, we've made it, we've done it. You know, doesn't get better than this. Once we were paid, we've flown down to the Isle of Jersey. So Jersey is this little, it's a British territory, but it's like a couple of hours south of the mainland. It's like between England and Spain. And we got flown down there to stand on top of a van. Curtain fell down in front of these vans. We backflipped off the van, and that was it. And it was like £1,000 each to do a backflip off of a van. And this is the kind of stupid shit they were throwing at us post Britain's Got Talent. So kids, do talent shows.
I would not. I would not do that for £1,000.
So then again, like our entire adult life has been just plagued by international shit fucking up our day. 2008, 2009, financial crisis. All of the companies that we were working for, we were doing like Christmas parties for big banks. We were doing like big openings of massive buildings in the city. It just dried up overnight. So I had this taste of the high life of this, like, yeah, we've made it. And then it was just taken away from me. So I went back to doing what I knew. I was contacted by a couple of inner city schools. Just for the benefit of anyone who's not familiar with London, the East End of London is kind of, it's a bit of a rough area. I guess I can liken it to like the Bronx or sort of North Island of Man. So for those from New York, I don't know, whatever the bad area is in your city, that's probably what it is. And we were invited into these inner city schools to just like teach them what we did, which is running and jumping. And as you know, we're in schools with gymnastic equipment and teach them to run up walls and jump off stuff, but it engaged them. And that one of those first schools I taught in, one of those guys has gone on to he's like a producer for, again, I don't know if they're big over there, but the Sidemen, who are a massive YouTube channel, like 20 million subscribers. He's now their head of content. And he messaged me a couple of years ago and it's like, I only had the confidence to believe that I could go into film production because I spoke to you guys and heard about what you guys were doing. And like, that's amazing. And that was like the best part of maybe 15 years ago. So I just got really heavily involved in coaching and then developing the coaching standards, eventually opening my own gym, which is what I've got now. We're just actually looking at opening our second academy. We've put an offer in on the building, meeting the landlord on Monday. So like renovating an old farm, which I'm really excited about, like turning that into a parkour facility, which is going to be amazing.
Yeah, that could be very interesting.
Yeah.
So it's a little more dangerous. So why are you driven to coaching then? Is it because of the impact? You get to see the palpable changes with your students?
Well, I suppose we're then on to like the darker stuff. My father, the guy that I say is my father, he was my stepdad. My parents split up when I was 5 years old, and my biological father lived quite a good life, you know, driving Porsches and Range Rovers, and I didn't see him, and he didn't give us any money. So I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment with my mum who slept on the sofa. You know, that was my life. So when Graham Wendes, my stepdad, came along when I was like 6, and he just filled me with like his values and his like what was important to him, and that was like he's the most altruistic person you could ever imagine. And I think there's a lot of learning to be done on what's good and what's bad about that. Like he would live in squalor to ensure that other people had things. You've got to look after yourself. That's something I've learned as an adult, and I have to look after my family. But he would put people in touch with people. He'd pay for people to go on courses, and he would just be an amazing person, and he'd never want any thanks for it. In fact, a lot of the people he helped never knew that he helped them. And that was the life that he lived. So when he was diagnosed with cancer in 2016, I couldn't do anything but say, right, come and live with me. You're going to live with me, and whatever this looks like that's. So he came and lived with me for, it was about 18 months from diagnosis till he passed away. And the last 3-4 months, he went and got his own apartment because he said he was feeling better, but probably wasn't. And the last few months were really bad. He was in and out of hospice. He was on oxygen. It was a cancer of the esophagus. And you know, even some of those last nights when I'm sitting there in the hospice with him, and the people looking at you going, that guy doesn't care about visiting hours. You know, just leave him alone. And the very last night that he was alive, and I just sat with him and just waited for his breathing to stop. And like it's hard to talk about now, but it was 2017. Yeah. So I felt an obligation to like continue his legacy, to make sure that I could bring like the good that he brought and continue bringing that good. And I know that sounds contrived, but that's all you've got left at that point, is to like, he was a really, really good person, and I am the person I am because he raised me that way. Therefore, I owe it to the world for that to carry on. So that's when I started getting involved in a lot more community projects rather than trying to have a gym as a commercial operation. So I started like going out into the like what we call our like housing estates. So in the UK, we used to have what they called council estates, which were owned by the local government, and they were given to people from like low income families. So if you couldn't afford your own house, you would get a house that was either subsidized or fully paid for. And we call them council estates. I think I have heard that the US referring to like the projects and things like that. Yeah. So we don't have that anymore now. When a new estate is built, like when a housing estate is built, 30% of it has to go towards social housing and it's managed privately. So you've still got a lot of these old council estates where you would just have big pockets of people who are low income families, some working, some not. So we would go out and we would do parkour in these estates to try and engage these kids. And I got a great testimonial from a police officer from a pretty bad one saying they had 0 nuisance youth reports for the 6 weeks we were working there. 0, none.
Wow.
So you've and it was at that point that I realized like the real power of what we had, which is an activity that's an urban activity that's seen as a little bit rebellious, but it also engages the kids into do something physical. And while they're doing something physical, they're not throwing stones at shops and hassling old ladies and, you know, and they're not running with the drug dealers. And that was a big problem in that state was the kids were being groomed by drug dealers to like deliver envelopes to people. And again, I had to make some choices about which direction I wanted to go in at that point. And I've stuck by if a kid is already involved in gangs, I'm staying away from that because that's not putting myself and my coaches and my guys at risk of interfering with gang activity.
Yeah.
But we'll do everything we can to stop the kids getting involved in the first place.
So how do you know if they're already involved in a gang? Is it just from kind of the word on the street?
Generally speaking, because we've got a good relationship with the police and we get a lot of referrals from police, generally speaking, if they've got a criminal record and they've been arrested for something like adjacent to that, they're probably involved already. Some young people wear it as a badge of honor. And again, if they're really proud of it, it's going to be hard to break that. The county lines gangs are quite a big deal around where I am because we're about 30 minutes outside London. So we are like just outside the central hub of the city and a lot of like stuff filters out. And you get a lot of like wannabe gangsters around here, kids that think they're tough that wouldn't last 5 minutes in a really bad state. So our bread and butter has always been like the kids that have got the chance of going off the rails and stopping them doing that. Like we've had some interesting ones like you're a former cop, you've seen everything. But a 12-year-old who was taken on an armed robbery, like his dad and his uncle took a 12-year-old on an armed robbery, put a mask on and stand at the back and hold the door open. You know, like how bad your childcare situation got to be for that to be? And unfortunately, that kid didn't get a criminal record. It was seen that he didn't have any choice in the matter.
Yeah. And
he was involved in one of our projects and he had some really positive outcomes. So, but when that's your home life, what are we supposed to do? So that's really the direction we've gone in. We see about 700 kids a week across our one site and a few satellite ones. There's no differentiation between the kids that are on projects and the kids that pay to attend. Social mobility is really important. So the kids that can pay to come and join in do, and it doesn't matter who in the room is paying and who's not paying. We just know we've got a mentorship program. Again, that's a bit of a golden handshake. We speak to the kids, we get to know them, and we're like, look, do you want a job? Do you want to get involved in this? Do you want to do that? Yeah. We take the kids out on shows. So those that are competent will go out and do performances and shows. And that's a real like instant win, isn't it? You've got an arena full of people cheering and clapping for you. Like, well, there's some positive feedback. So we've got a really good thing going on, but it wasn't without difficulty because again, coming off the back of the financial crisis, what were you doing about then? 2008, 2009, were you serving then?
Oh, yeah. I started in 2007, so I had a hard time finding a job outside of college. And that's how I actually ended in law enforcement because I couldn't find another job. And then I stayed.
Did you see an increase in like, again, I'm just interested in what's, so you're in the South now. Were you in the force in the South as well?
Yes. I was here in, I don't usually say the city when everybody can figure it out after a little while. So we saw pretty much everything that you could. Except for a 12-year-old getting taken on a robbery. I hadn't seen that.
He probably wouldn't have been very good, you know.
Yeah, couldn't leave you at home. That'd be irresponsible. I'll say from a law enforcement perspective, it always sucks if you're in there for long enough and you'll see these kids and you'll feel bad for them and they're young and you wish you could do more with them. And then all of a sudden they hit this age where they make that decision of what they're going to do. And most of them do take that way of, crime. And it's very few that don't. So it's nice to see them kind of taking that path, where you're at and where you're making that impact. That's nice. And I'm sure law enforcement appreciates it over there as well.
Yeah. Well, and we do get some funding from law enforcement because on a very simple level, we save them money. Because if there's less going through a criminal justice system, there's less court cases, there's less arrests. It saves law enforcement money. So if they give us funding to do crime prevention, that's it's helping their remit. But again, going back to like the shit hitting the fan, I was married I got married in 2015. I probably shouldn't have got married in the first place. Like it was a bit rocky at times anyway. But you feel like you've lived together for long enough. And we got married in 2015, and then Graham got sick. He lived with us, and he passed away in 2017. And then we had like the aftermath of that to kind of deal with, and that was hard. And then 2018, I was just coasting. We opened the first academy, and I was just working really hard, but I wasn't concentrating on life at all. And myself and my wife had 2 miscarriages, so we lost two babies. Which after losing a parent, he was alive for the first one, he wasn't alive for the second one, and everything is just harder when you're in a mess. So, and we never really kind of got back on track. And like, as far as I'm aware, there was another guy that she ended up, and she's in a relationship with that guy now, and great. But our relationship was over long before she strayed. So I can't particularly hold it against her. But the January 2019, it's a Friday night, I get home from work and she's like, I don't love you anymore, I'm leaving. Well, that's not a great day at all. Yeah. And I didn't tell anyone because I'm a guy and I'm proud. So I went to work on Saturday because I work on Saturdays because I run a sports club. And then Sunday, I had some friends, like my 2 best friends over, and they came and stayed for the night, and we had some pizza and some beers and watched some films because that's what you do. And then Monday morning, I get a phone call from the mother of a guy who coached for me, but was also one of my best friends, say that he'd taken his own life. Shit.
The day after? So this is the day after wow.
The same weekend. So my wife left on the Friday night. My friend killed himself Sunday night, and I found out Monday morning. Now, what that did is that opened up one of the toughest periods that I've had to get through. And that was, not only was he my friend, so I've got my own feelings, he also worked for me. He was one of my coaches. So I have to manage my workplace. Mm-hmm. But he was also a coach of young children who I had to tell that this had happened. Not in any detail, but I had to tell them he wasn't around anymore. And I actually, oddly enough, I had to go to another funeral on the Tuesday, the following day. And I was driving, it was halfway up the country. It was about a 3-hour drive away. That is halfway up our country, by the way. That's 3 hours.
That's me going on a weekend trip. So
yeah, there you go. But I had a 3-hour drive and I was just phoning one person, having a really difficult conversation with them, telling them he's no longer with us, hang up, phone the next person, have the same conversation. And you think like by the end of that drive, I was exhausted. I was like, because while I've had that conversation 10 times, it's the first time that person's had the conversation. It's a surprise to them and I'm having to answer questions and deal with people being upset over and over. And I'm having to be that guy. I'm having to be the grown up in the room when I'm trying to deal with my own shit and can't even begin to think about my personal life. So, and it was hard. And I, if nothing else, like for all of the relationship stuff, I phoned my wife on the Monday and I said to her, look, this has happened. Can you just come home? Can you just come home and I need somebody at the moment. And she said, no. She's like, no. I'm like, cool. So
just a cold no?
Yeah, just no. So I spent the next 6 months, like there are things people do when bad things happen. And when you're in a hole, people tend to drink, they turn to drugs, they turn to whatever. And I thought I was being really, really healthy with my outlet. Like, I'm not going to start drinking. I'm not going to get on drugs or anything. I'm just going to ride my motorcycle. That's a really safe, healthy thing for me to be doing.
Yeah, I can say that's one thing I don't do because I've seen the repercussions of that.
Yeah. And that became a bit of a crutch. I would go out every night. And for anyone who rides motorcycles, like I was riding fast bikes and I would go and do track days and I would be doing track days at whatever speed the hell I wanted, which is not self-destructive, I guess, because I didn't break myself.
You're borderline there.
Yeah.
You're flirting with it.
I would be riding the same motorcycle on the roads and around British country lanes and every night. And we were doing stupid stuff and you become a bit numb to it. Like you look down at the speedometer and you're like, 80 miles an hour, that's quite fast. And then couple of weeks later, that's not fast anymore. You look down at the speedo and 100 miles an hour, 100 miles an hour is not fast anymore. And it got to a point where I was regularly doing 140, 145 miles an hour. I'm like, you're a cop. You know what that looks like when it goes wrong. So,
usually I just see them when they're flat on the road, though, not
yeah.
while they're doing the 145, because that is very fast.
Yeah. And when it stops being scary is the time to be worried. So, I thought, I'm not drinking and I'm not doing drugs and I'm not, going out with prostitutes or doing any of these things. I'm just going out on a motorbike, which is my hobby. Well, actually, that really wasn't a good thing to be doing. So, but it took me a long time to realize that. And I didn't really start getting my shit together until probably the end of 2019, which was a really bad time to do anything. Yeah. But like that, Abos's death caused a lot of problems.
When did you feel like coping with it? How long did you actually give yourself time, I guess is what I'm asking, to process?
I didn't even tell anyone outside of my two best friends that my wife had left me until May of that year.
Wow.
Yeah. Because everything was all about, it was an accidental conversation. I was a customer at work. I was like, oh, hey, how's Becky? I was like, oh, funny story.
Hilarious story.
Yeah. And one of the guys at work overheard and he's like, what? I was like, yeah, well, I guess I should probably tell you guys now. And I didn't tell you because of, this. And, but also the business was really struggling because when you've got a coach of young people and they're not there anymore, a lot of the kids stop coming because that was their coach, or coming to this place reminds them of that person that's not around anymore. And his name was Abbas, his family were Muslim, and we had to then try and manage the kids going to a Muslim funeral because the body's not in a coffin, it's in a shroud. And before putting the body in the ground, they tear the shroud and reveal the face. So we had to quietly speak to some parents and say, look, this is going to happen. You don't want your kids to be standing over there. You really don't. And even that, I'm having to try and be the grown up in the room. So at the funeral, I'm making myself not cry. I'm making myself stand there and just be really stoic. And whereas I'm just broken on the inside because I've got no wife, my best friend. And it was awful. And I really wish that I'd just been able to let go. I can just be myself and show some feeling, but I didn't. And by the time I started getting myself together, which was by the end of summer, so maybe September, probably September time, 2019, I was like, right, focus on the business. I'm going to build this thing back up. We started a whole new a business plan and started doing things again. I was like, right, I'm digging myself out of this. And then everyone starts talking about COVID. It's this thing that's coming out of it's in China, it's in Europe, and even at that point, I was like, no, it's going to be fine. Even over Christmas, I'm like, no, it's all just nothing big's going to happen. And the business starts tanking because people don't want to do social things, and we didn't know what was going on. And then, we all know what happened. 2020, Europe was in a massive lockdown. I'm interested. Did you guys have a national lockdown or did you have statewide stuff? Or how did it work?
We had local regulations, so to speak. So a lot of this stuff would close down, but we, as police, we operated as normal.
Well, yeah.
We didn't do anything different, and we would get exposed all the time. And just most of the shops and stuff were closed, and they'd limit capacity with what was open. But that was basically it. Some of the businesses, like the government stuff, would do telework, but that was what changed. Most people stayed at home, and then the people that were, essential went to work.
Yeah. We call it key workers or essential workers, which is, the people that don't often get a lot of respect. People that work in shops, people that work in police officers and ambulance workers, and
all of a sudden it's like, you're essential. You're like, I wasn't could you up the paycheck a little bit? Because I wasn't a minute ago.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys would even heard about it, but we had this ridiculous thing where every Thursday night, everyone would open their front doors and bang pots and pans together.
What?
To say thank you to the nurses and doctors who were working. Yeah,
that's kind of cool, though.
Every Thursday night, everyone opened their front doors and it was like this weird social interaction. Yeah, to say thank you to the doctor. It was, weird. Clap the NHS, our National Health Service. So, yeah.
Well, that's kind of cool.
But yeah, I got to say, while the impact of COVID was awful,
yeah,
I actually liked that bubble. I liked and I enjoyed being told that I couldn't go to work. My gym couldn't be open. And I knew the whole time, the shit was going to hit the fan eventually. But the government was saying that, I had a mortgage at the time, so I could take a mortgage holiday. So I could take 6 months off and not pay my mortgage. And that'd just be added to the end of it interest free, or that. That wouldn't accrue interest over that period. Yeah. And we got a furlough system. So I got next to no money, but it was enough for me to feed myself and pay my phone bill. So I just stayed at home. One of my friends had a funny situation late 2019, and he ended up living with me in my marital home. So I was living with a good friend who was a chef, and I had a garden. I lived in quite a rural area. So if I wanted to go for a walk, I had a park across the road. I could walk out into the farmland and walk along trails. Like, I was in a good place. And that 16 months we were under restrictions for gyms in the UK. 16 months. But I needed it. And that was the time that I cleared my head. And that was the time that I was making daily videos for our customers. I didn't charge anyone anything. I just put all the memberships on hold and just like, we'll sort it out. We'll sort it out when this is over. And unfortunately, when we came out of lockdown, the landlord of my commercial property, the building I rented, said they wanted the full back rent for the closed period, which was a choice, and that's the choice they made. Then they said that they were putting the rent up by 20% because they'd made losses over the previous couple of years. So my essential business outgoings coming out of lockdown increased by £2,000 a month.
Jesus.
Yeah. So I effectively stepped out of lockdown 40 grand in debt. And it's another one of those things you're like, why am I doing this again?
Yeah.
I could just fold my business. The liability is limited. I can go do something else. I've got access to bounce back loans and grants and things which I could default on without affecting my credit rating because the government's throwing money at the rebuilding. But I didn't. I stuck with it. I took out another 45 grand of private loan to build the thing back up because I didn't want to give up on my community, my baby, my business, this thing that I've been working on. And we set up a not-for-profit. 2022, I set up a not-for-profit. So we called it the Kinetics Academy, as opposed to like our team Kinetics, which is the commercial business. And that's my focus now. We have such amazing outcomes. We take kids and so we've got, I don't know if it's the same terminology out there, but when we refer to someone as NEETs, that is not in employment, education, or training. So if they are between the age of 16 and 25 and they're not at school, college, work, we call them NEET. And the government's trying to crack down on a number of NEETs. So again, we've just had our employment figures released last week, and we're now up to 16% of all young people between 16 and 25 are NEET and not in employment. Like 16%. That's a million individuals across England, which is mad. Like, that's a huge amount of people. So how do we tackle that? Again, politically speaking, our government put up the minimum wage to I think it's like £12.50, £12.45 or so, which that I don't disagree with having a high minimum wage. But that can only be inflationary because the companies, like small businesses, can only pass on to customers because they can't stomach it. The government also put up the taxes that the company pays for employing people. So it's what we call our national insurance, social security payments. So in addition to your income tax, you also pay towards the welfare system. It's a mandatory sort of socialist payment we have to pay. And that is the employer that pays it. And that went up by a couple of percentage points. So it suddenly became a lot more expensive to employ people, like in the last year. So unemployment is really high at the moment. Government is the most unpopular government since records began. And I'm just like absolutely adamant that we're not going to give up on these people. So we've got, I say 16 staff. I've got a 7,000 square foot building. And we've got outgoings of around 32 grand a month just to keep the lights on. Yeah, it's a big operation from, I want to jump on and off of stuff to like this. And earlier this year, no, not earlier this year, we're in 2026 now, end of last year, December, we were again worried, like, where's the money coming from? How are we going to keep going? Why are we keeping going? And Tash and I, so again, in 2020, I met Tash, who's my partner, the mother of my child. We met 2020. We'd both been married before. We both had no kids, and we just clicked. We just hit off because she's an amazing human being. She's wonderful. But the biggest problem we have is that we're too similar.
Do you feed each other's like toxic adrenaline?
Yeah. Like we need a grown up in the room. But we now own our house. We've got a little girl, so priorities change, and I'm like, should we be keeping going with this thing? I'm still saddled in debt. We're running this thing, and every penny's going on paying the people, because all of our coaching staff, every member of our delivery staff has come in through a project, so all of them have got lived experience. So when we're talking about like giving back and we're giving these people employment, not the same in the office. The office staff have got a variety of backgrounds, but all of the delivery staff are all peer leaders. They're kids that have gone through the projects, ranging from 16 years old right the way up to 2, and then me in my mid-40s. Early 40s. So
early. We're early.
Yeah, early 40s. So I've got an emotional attachment to this. A sensible business person would know when to cut and run. But I think I think when you're looking at like resilience and grit is knowing when not to quit and carrying on anyway. And it was almost like if quitting is off the table, what are you going to do instead? And that's how it's always been. Like, there's so many points at which I could have just given up and done something else. And I didn't. And we put in an application to a big national lottery foundation or a big charitable foundation. And we put in an application. It took us about a little over a year to put this thing together. And we got a 6-figure grant 2 weeks before Christmas.
Holy crap. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you. And I was on the phone. They phoned me straight away. And they said, yeah, it's unconditional based on what you've submitted, what you want to do. And I just started crying. And I went and saw Tash, who was 10 feet away from me, and our little girl's there. I was like, we're okay. Everything's going to be okay. Like, but my concern was we haven't got to fire anyone. We can keep everyone. We can keep the staff. Because that was a non-negotiable for me. These kids I've known since they were little. I know why they're with us. I know their story. It's that like staff aren't disposable. So we're looking at taking on the farm, and we've just employed 2 new people, one of whom is an incredible woman. Her CV, there's probably stuff I can't talk about, so I won't. But if you're listening, Emma is incredible as a person, with such a amazing background. And someone else we took on who was 17, and she wanted to drop out of college. So over here, 16 to 18 is college, and then university is 18 plus. So we refer to like that after high school. You leave high school at 16, and then you do college for 2 years before you go to university if you choose to. Education is mandatory to 18, but the 16 to 18, you can go and do an apprenticeship, or you can work in industry while training, or you can do 2 years of mandatory college. That's how it works. So she was 17, and she didn't want to study what she was studying. She was actually training to be. She was doing a community service course, which was a lead into police training. And she just decided it wasn't for her. And she said she wanted to drop out. And did we have a job? I said, I can, but I don't want you to drop out of college to come and work here. I don't want you to do that. And she was very frank. And she said, I'm going to drop out of college because I don't want to be there. I'd like to work here if you've got something for me, but I'll completely understand if you don't. So we agreed that we would take her on as a mentee. She's in the office learning a trade, because I'd love it if she worked for us long term, but I imagine she'll outgrow us. She's a smart girl. She just doesn't have any experience. In a couple of years, when she's outgrown us, I'll give her the best reference in the world because she's amazing. But if we can give her that as a gift, then that's where we're at. And that's the focus now, is the mentorship. So when people come through us, whether they want to be a sports coach or they want to do something else, we help people get to the next stage.
Do you think it's because you're giving these kids the opportunity to like identify what they want out of life in addition to the training? Or what do you think the change is? Why are they talking and actually making these decisions and stuff now?
Because someone's listening to them. We're seeing a huge rise in like mental health issues. And again, I'm not a particularly fluffy person. Like I'm not the guy that's going to sit there and go, oh, you're feeling anxious, you should have 2 years off work. Like I'm not that guy. But I do understand that, particularly like for those that were going through COVID when they were at those really important, crucial developmental milestones, that's had an impact. So now we're seeing kids that are like completely feral and don't give a shit about anything, or kids that don't want to leave their bedroom because they're too scared to go out because their entire childhood was overshadowed by fear. So we just got to find out what it is that makes them tick and help them on their way. And if that means they work for me and I can mentor them myself, great. And if we can signpost them in another direction, then great. Like, I appreciate not everyone wants to be a sports coach. Not everyone wants to work in an office. Not everyone wants to do what we do.
Yeah.
But that's all I've got to give at the moment. So that's where the mentorship comes from.
I have a question, not to backtrack, but I do have a question about your buddy, because I always get curious about what people ask themselves when they have somebody close to them pass away like that, or that take their own life, because we always have our internal questions, like maybe they called me, maybe they did something I didn't do. Was there something that you were living with after that you kind of had to get over or get past, or realize that there was nothing I could do with that and that was their decision in that moment?
Yeah, because and that's kind of the reason I didn't tell people about my wife leaving me, because on the Saturday when I left work, I was stood on the other side of our building from him. I went, I'll see you on Monday, and just walked out. That was my goodbye. That was the last thing I ever said to him. And I was kicking myself that I didn't go and give him a hug. I didn't even, like, had I told him what was going on in my own life, maybe he'd want to go out for a drink that night. Maybe we could have hung out, maybe, like all of that. Like, and I know that's not the right way of thinking, because he was fighting so many of his own battles. But I'm like, if I just told him a little bit about my trauma, would he have held on a little bit longer to be there for me? Like, because we had a moment in the November. So it was the January, middle of January, he took his own life. And in the November, we went and we both quite like taking photos. We're like quite into photography. So a Sunday, we just went and got some cameras and we set some studio lights up, and the two of us, another friend, just went and did some photography for the afternoon. And during that time, I saw some self-harm marks on him and I saw some scars. And he played it off and he made excuses, but he also said, like, this is the best I felt in a long time. I really needed a day out today. Like, we've got to do this again. And we were going to do something at the end of January, and it never happened. So I've actually got the photos we took on that day. I've got a photo of him from that day on my office wall. He looks at me every single day. And that reminds me of, like, that might have been the last really good day he had. So, but yeah, I shoulder a lot. I fully understand, appreciate. If that was how he felt, and if being alive for longer would have meant that he was in more pain, then it was very selfish of me for him to want, for me to want him to stay around. But there were, because his family are Muslim, and taking your own life is seen as a really bad thing.
Yeah.
They didn't want to talk about it, and I get that, and I respect that. I completely respect that. And it wasn't until members of his family started talking about the reason, or like what had happened, I felt like I could, because it's not my place to talk about it. But I've wanted to do like men's mental health talks and get involved in that kind of thing, because I don't want anyone else to go through that. I know what it feels like, and it's shit. It's horrible. It's awful. And I know that's very selfish of me. But yeah, I'm the one that's left behind. You know, they say when you take your own life, you don't end the pain. You just give it to somebody else.
Yep, somebody else picks it up.
And that was hard. So yeah, it was very, very difficult to deal with. Like, what more could I have done? Was I so wrapped up in my own stuff that I wasn't there for him? But the night he did it, he'd gone out with a friend, and she had some relationship problems, and this girl had sat like in his car with him on the roadside, just chatting about her boyfriend problems and her problems all night, and then drove home. He went to his bedroom, did what he was going to do, and at no point did he let anyone know. Like, he knew what he was going to do. The guy was a PhD student. He was a really intelligent guy. He'd had some injuries, and therefore he'd got involved with opiates and fentanyl, and he was quite dependent on them and hid it really, like I say, he was a smart guy. And that's what happened, is that he took an amount of that, and a note was left and an amount was taken, and he'd have known how much he could take that would mean he would go to sleep and not wake up again. And the only solace I take is, like, there was probably no discomfort whatsoever. But yeah, I think because of how well he hid his troubles, and even on the night that he did it, he was there for someone else. He was being their shoulder to cry on and being their ear. And then he went home and did that. And at no point did he indicate that he was not having a good time. I don't think anyone could have done anything to stop it, as hard as that is.
Yeah. I'm a firm believer in once they make that decision, especially no matter if somebody's there 24 hours a day, at some point, somebody's got to go home and somebody's going to have time by themselves.
Yep.
But it's a hard thing to live with regardless, even though you know it's not your fault and there's nothing you could do. It's still, there's always something that you're living with the last conversation, I feel like.
Yeah. I mean, and that whole year was a mess. As another friend of ours, we were due to go to Berlin for a couple of days to do some parkour in Berlin. It's a great city to jump around in. And one of the guys didn't turn up, and we're trying to phone him. And so I've had to, with the other guys, go to the airport. Airport's like 20 minutes from my house. So we've gone to the airport and flown. And I land in Berlin to a voicemail from his brother that he's crashed into a tree on his way to my house. And he did survive, but he was one of like 6 people in our county to have survived a crash into a tree at 90 miles an hour plus.
That's unusual.
Yeah. And that one took a lot of, like, how much blame do I shoulder for that? He was in a rush to my house and I didn't wait for him.
Yeah.
Bottom line is, he liked to drive fast, and it was early in the morning and he came off the road and hit a tree. And he turned his life around. He donated to the wreck of his car to the police or fire service, who would take it around to schools and say, this is what happens if you speed. He got involved in safer ride. Like, he was in a coma for a long time and got quite serious brain damage, which he's now back in work. But like, this was nearly a decade ago.
Yeah.
That whole year was just like shit after shit after shit. And it was all just in the periphery and too close. And it's really hard to, like, you don't want to say, oh, woe is me, like this awful thing that happened to you bothers me, because I'm not the one who's wrapped myself around a tree. I'm not the one who's taken my own life. I'm not the one that's there suffering and dying of cancer. But I'm dealing with it all.
Which shows that you love them. You know, I mean, because if you take on any kind of responsibility for something, you know, not that you need to take responsibility, but it just means that you care.
Yeah. So yeah, when I started looking at your podcast and I talked about resilience, I'm like, yeah, well, my story is not, I wasn't a serviceman. I haven't done that, but, you know, I've just taken the knocks and get back up again, taken the knock and get back up again. And and just keep doing that. And at the moment, we're in a really good place. And I imagine there's going to be some shit around the corner. We're going to have to deal with that as well.
Because as soon as you think you're good, there's going to be something else that comes out.
Absolutely.
So the grit aspect of it, because we see so many, I know you do too, so many people that do just decide to quit, like, okay, that's enough, I'm done. What do you think is the pivotal point that gives somebody a little bit more grit? Or maybe, was it your athletic background? And even then, what gave you that grit? Like, what character trait do you think it is that lets people continue on instead of just giving up?
Like I said earlier, for me, it's like there is no other option. Yes, I could just give in, like realistically I could, and then I'd have to deal with whatever that looks like. But in my mind, it's just not an option. It's not one of the things that's going to happen. Like, even when I don't have any idea how we're going to get through this thing, I just have to tell myself that we just will, because you have to. And I know that sounds really stupid because people don't. Some things don't come off. But in my life, by just sticking around and just keep trying, it works out. And I know it's terrible advice, like, because I've got nothing quantitative to add to it, or nothing qualitative to add to it. But it's just, just if you just keep turning up and keep doing the thing, just don't give up. Example, it's that if you're setting up a YouTube channel, that's always the advice, isn't it? Most people give up after a couple of videos because no one watches it, and all these overnight successes have been going for 10 years, and suddenly someone picks up on it. And I think that's the story, is like, you just have to keep doing it and doing it as well as you can, whatever your thing is. And for anyone who's thinking like that they can't carry on, it really helps to have something to carry on for. And for me now, I've got a mortgage. Well, it's not that important, but you've got a mortgage, but I've got a little girl. Not only do I need to leave a legacy for her, because I don't know what the world's going to look like in another 20 years' time. So it's my duty as a parent to make sure that I can leave her something, so that she's got a step up that I didn't have, so that her journey will be easier than mine. And also to try and make the world a better place for her. Even all of the nonsense that's been going on with the 3 million files coming out and all of that, like, there's a running theme of people not treating women and girls particularly well. And I'm a girl dad, and if anyone touches my little girl, I'll kill them. So how do I make the world a better place?
Yep, agreed. It becomes a little bit more volatile in my own mind when I don't think about myself and I start thinking of my kid. Then I'm like, all right, gloves are off when it goes to my kid. I'm sure you're the same way.
Reading some of the stuff that's coming out and those files, and again, trying to stay away out of politics here, but it's hard to not imagine how you would feel if it were your child. And I'm like, nah, and I can't be overbearing, I can't be overprotective, and I need to let her spread her wings. So the only other thing I can do is make the world a better place. That's who you got.
That's well said. Yeah, exactly. So you've obviously done a lot with Ninja Warrior also, which I failed to mention thus far, which I do want to ask how that went. But with everything else, what do you need to accomplish to feel like you've done what I need to do at your deathbed, so to speak? What do you need to accomplish?
I got two things. I've had this conversation myself a lot recently, because things are in a really good place, but we've still got a lot of work to do. So I'd like the not-for-profit to kind of run itself, and so Tash and I to not have to be as involved. I'd like it to tick itself over, because we don't want to take money out of that. So therefore we need to do something else. Short term, we haven't had a vacation in 4 years. We've got to do that.
What?
Yeah. Last time we went on vacation was when Tash was pregnant with Poppy, which was 4 years ago next month. So that we have to do this year. We've got to have some time off, because we've had like a couple of days here and there or a day off, but we need to go away for a week and turn our phones off. And that's
where are you going to go?
Anyway, we like camping. So like we could go down to the south of the country, and there's some Dorset or Cornwall or some of these lovely rural areas, coastal towns. There's some lovely camping. Poppy loves camping, and that's this year. Like we're going to have a vacation this year if it kills us. And then medium term, I want to take the learning of the last few years and start giving back to other businesses, because there's a lot of people doing a lot of work around making young people more employable. And I think there's something, that's something we do as well, is getting people ready for the workplace. But I also think there's a lot to be done in getting workplaces ready for young people. There's a lot of rhetoric that goes around about young people are lazy and and if you look at like some of the things that are written on the walls of Roman buildings thousands of years ago, there's stories about how people are saying young people are lazy and young people don't want to work. This is like human history has always said that.
Yep, it's a wheel.
Yeah. But what we need to accept is society's changing. And again, like trying to stay as far out of politics as I possibly can. The world has changed. our parents and our grandparents could, like the American dream, it was a thing. You could go to work, you could walk into an office with a CV and wear a suit, like with your resume in your hand and a suit on and say, can I have a job? That's not the world that these kids live in. I think there's some work to be done, particularly around like small and medium-sized businesses on the changing needs of young people, because we're living in a world where if you're not paying them very much and they can't buy a house and they can't have a couple of cars and a couple of holidays, then all they're going to do is they're going to move from job to job to job to job to job. They're going to go work, do the same shit job, but their friend works there instead. So I don't know what the figures are like in the United States, but in the UK, absenteeism, that is people who are employed but aren't in work, costs the economy 100 billion a year. 75 billion for people who are off sick and 25 billion for people who are at work and not being productive. So that is people who either in work and can't really be bothered, or people that are working but are not at capacity because they're burnt out, they're tired, they're exhausted. So 100 billion in our small country per year to the economy, which is tens of thousands of pounds to most companies through absenteeism. My company has next to zero absenteeism, next to zero.
Why? Why do you think that is?
Because we've worked really, really hard to build a workplace culture. If someone calls in sick, I know that they're dying. If someone, like most of the time, I have 16 and 17-year-old guys turn up for work like looking like death, and I'm like, go home. It's like, oh, but I don't want to let the team down. And this is like the foundation of this is you can't expect young people to care about the shareholders, to care about the profits, because they're not getting any of that.
Mm-hmm.
You can expect them to care about the other people on their team. If your team all like and respect each other and the team are all working well, then they won't call in sick because they're not letting their friends down. And if someone is off sick, the others will step up because they're not and that leads into a better customer experience, and that leads into better income and better profits and all of that kind of stuff. And if you're treating people with respect, but you're also building a workplace culture where the young people or the people you're employing have a mutual respect for each other. It's taken a long time to get there, but that's what we've built. So any person in the organization can knock on my office door and ask me a question, or knock on that door and tell me they don't like something, and I'll listen to them. And we have like weekly touch base with one team. We have a monthly touch base with everyone. We have regular team days where the highest members of staff in the organization are doing the same activities and engaging with and speaking to the people who are at the bottom of the food chain effectively. Like the part-time apprentice is talking to the CEO. Well, that's me, but and I think that's really, really important to get visibility. So we're taking the kids who aren't going to school, we're identifying what the problems are. And one of the things we identified was about in-grouping, just a basic primate need. We're just reward-based primates. We're really simple creatures, some more than others. And if we're taking a bunch of kids to come and do our activity, it doesn't matter what the activity is, because if they spend 20 minutes on a bus together, that's a shared experience. Those kids now will want to go to school or be more inclined to go to school because they've got someone to sit with at lunch. They've got someone to talk with in the playground. They've got someone to walk to school with. So by trying to build those basic in-groups and give them shared experiences and shared positive experiences, we can get them to engage with things better. The same is true in the workplace. You give them shared positive experiences, you make the workplace a positive place, and they will want to come there and they will want to support each other. If you treat your staff like shit, they're just going to go somewhere else, and you've got to spend a fortune training someone else. So there's a very, very long answer to your question, but that's my next mission is I'm in the process of setting up some online learning and some consultancy to share that knowledge and kind of put that into a course that we can teach to other companies.
Well, you want to come teach the cops here in the States that, because they're suffering. that they don't have any of that that you just said.
But it's the old school thinking, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's really hard because you don't want to be like some, really fluffy, hey, everyone shake hands and happy clappy, because that's not what it's about. But mutual respect shouldn't be a problem. Like, that's important.
Yeah, agreed. It's investment in the job and the people around you. And it's just, I don't know if it's ego that gets most leaders or people in higher positions or what, but it seems to fail once it gets to a certain level, at least in different coaching aspects and work here.
Yeah, I think the workplace could learn a lot from sport. And then sport's not perfect. You're looking at what's happened in gymnastics, for example. Where there's power, there's abuse of power.
Yeah,
so we need to that needs to be checked, like, massively.
Yeah, that was a huge deal. But side note, by the way, I wanted to give a hat tip to you because swimmers always did the most. We always put in the most hours because, they'll regulate how many hours you can train a week and stuff. So we had to technically, I think, volunteer a few hours a week.
Yeah.
We didn't know we were. But the only people that would put more hours in were the gymnasts, and their diet was strict. We'd eat like 3 whole pizzas, and we see the gymnast eat like nothing.
Yeah.
So mad respect to the gymnasts. So
Wow,
you being one.
Well, I stepped away from gymnastics, and this is a story that I very rarely tell publicly, but fuck it, right? I was working in a gym, and it was before 2012, before the Olympics, which was in London. So there were some venues that were trying to be the warm-up venue for the Olympics, and this was one of those gyms. And I worked there as a recreational coach. And an Eastern European team came over. I won't say which country, but there was an Eastern European team came over. And there was a little girl who's maybe 9 or 10 years old standing on one of the beams. And she didn't want to do her routine. And the coach took her off into a back room, and we could hear it. And this little girl comes out a couple minutes later, red face, tears, wipes her down. She got on the beam, and she did her beam routine perfectly. And we're like, myself and the other coaches, a couple of the coaches that I worked with wanted to go and get involved. And our head coach went, "You can't. That's just the way they do things. You just leave them alone." And when questioned, the coach of this Eastern European team said, the gymnast needs to be more afraid of the coach than of the move. If you do the move, you might get hurt. If you don't do the move, you will get hurt. I'm like, I get the logic. Like, what you're saying is true, but at what cost? So, and that was the point at which that I said gymnastics is not for me. Like, the fact that I don't know what I would do if I were the head coach in that situation. I feel like I'd have a word. I probably wouldn't go and fight the guy, but because he was massive, but I'd feel like I'd want to have a word. But for the head coach at our gym to just say that's the way they do things and we're still going to host them, I'm like, no, we shouldn't host them anymore. Like, just because they're going to do it doesn't mean we should allow them or facilitate that. So that was where I fell out of love with gymnastics. But yeah, that was
have seen a little bit of that myself and would agree. And I don't know if you've listened to a past guest that we had that was a swimmer where basically if she did bad, she would just have to, back when, the Iron Curtain was a thing, her coaches would make her kneel, I think, until for like a few hours on the concrete. And it was just normal. I'm like, man, I couldn't imagine.
Yeah. And the Chinese, even in our lifetimes, they were taking kids out of orphanages that had the right bone structure and binding their feet, and there'd be like a coach sitting there with a cigarette in his mouth, just jump, 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 jump. And the last person standing that didn't hurt themselves or cry would be the one that got put through to the development squad. Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah, that is, and that was, I wouldn't say that still goes on, but I wouldn't confidently say it doesn't still go on. But that was certainly within our lifetime that was happening, which is mad. Just before you move, I know you mentioned Ninja Warrior, but that was the fortnight after Graham died. I got a phone call the day he died from a producer of Ninja Warrior. And they said, and I'm like, go away, don't care. Like, not today. Which to a TV producer is like, I can imagine they're like, that's a great sob story. That's what we need. So they phoned me like a week later, and I was like, look, just sure, whatever. If you want me to do this thing, I'll do it. And that was what dug me out of a hole after he died. I trained every single day, just went to the gym, went and did like Ninja Warrior training, hanging on stuff, put chains around my neck, and I'm doing monkey bars. And I went and it was 4 weeks. It was 4 weeks after he died, almost to the day, that I went on the show, and I got through the first round. That was it. I'd achieved something. And that was the point at which I'm like, okay, I'm ready to go back to work now. I've done something. It didn't matter what that thing was. I needed to achieve something. I needed a win. And I did. And because I'd got through, they then got me back for the semifinals. And I just said, I don't care. I don't care. And like, I fell on like the 4th obstacle or something. And they were like, they get you there for the interview, and they're like, hey, are you going to do this again? I was like, no, I'm done.
It served its purpose.
Yeah. And I was like, and they're like, oh, could you? I said, I haven't got the fire in my belly anymore. I've done, this has been brilliant. This is what I needed. I probably shouldn't have even gone back for the semifinals, but my ego got the better of me. And now I'm like, I can get on with my life now. So it really did serve a purpose. But yeah, that was my Ninja Warrior story.
I still, when you see it on TV, it does look very easy. And then I've tried to do it myself. And I think people realize very quickly that stuff is not very easy. So still, again, a tip to you for doing that. And especially in the moment, it's nice to, the day, you say the day after? Or
the day he died, I got a phone call. What are the chances of that?
Yeah, that's...
So yeah, he passed away first thing in the morning. Sun was just coming up, and it was about lunchtime that day. And I'm like, because the phone was ringing all the time, I'd had to let relatives know. So I see a cell phone number come off my phone. I've answered it. I was like, you're the producer of what now? No, fuck off. Yeah.
I'm sure he appreciated it.
Yeah, I didn't want to make a big deal. Like, I didn't want them to talk about that. They mentioned like he's caring for his sick father, and I said like, yeah, I feel like he's on my shoulder, and like to do a TV show in memory of your dead relative just sounds really shit, but it really did help. Like, that's why I needed, it didn't matter what it was. I could have run a marathon. I probably couldn't have run a marathon, but I needed a win. I just needed to do something.
Well, good. I'm glad it gave you that so you could kind of refocus.
Yeah.
It's better than motorcycle or getting on a motorcycle. So I'm glad you did that.
Yeah. And so as soon as we started talking about having a child, I sold my motorcycle and haven't had another one. I'm still friends with a lot of those bike guys, but we lost 2 friends in a year. And the difference it makes to people, both of them 2020, in fact, the day before lockdown, and another one was just coming out of lockdown. And one of them, a tree fell on him. Nothing you can do about that. That's just a freak accident.
Was he cutting down a tree or?
No, he was riding his motorcycle along the road and it was a bit windy, or it'd been a bit windy, and this tree just fell as he rode past, just dead instantly. And the other one, she was known for being a bit leery on a bike, but she wasn't actually going fast. She was doing 30 miles an hour and she was going around a bend and her bike slid out from under her, but it slid into the path of oncoming traffic. And it was the oncoming. So, and the bike group that I was riding with all had like different opinions on like, you know, what do we do? And a lot of the guys went out and bought bigger, more powerful bikes. And they're like, you know, live for the moment, you know, you only live once. And I went, yeah, you know, I'd like to live a little bit longer. So I sold my bike.
Yeah. And the perspective changes when you have kids too, because you're like, I at least have to live now until they're like of age to take care of themselves. So
yeah.
After talking to you for a bit now, I can tell the passion that you have for your, I don't know how to call them kids, but the kids that come to your gym, because you are so apt to talk about them than you are your own stories. Like, you like obviously you go into your own stories and stuff, but you always kind of make it back about the kids, so you can tell how much you care about them, because it always snakes back around to them and the changes and how proud you are of them individually and as a whole. So that's cool, and not something you see a lot of today, I'll say. There's just not people that truly care. A lot of people are motivated by their own ego or something else that they're getting out of the situation. And I feel like you're truly motivated just for the betterment of those around you. So that's awesome.
Thank you. That's probably, I think I'd be more successful in business if I could sing my own praise a bit more. When we're talking about the project work and we're talking about outcomes with kids, I'm never going to stick a camera in that kid's face and say, hey, tell us about how shit your life was before you came here.
Yeah, it's a bit bad.
But some people do, you know, we go to charity things and they'll pull up a kid and the kid will be like, I was going to kill myself and I didn't because I went to this gym. I couldn't do that, you know, and I think if we made a lot more noise about what we do, I think we'd probably get more funding. Or if I talked more about, you know, it's even in my mind at the moment, I've got these things I want to say about how wonderful the shit that I've done is, but I have to stop and be like, oh, it's really egotistical. And like, but I've built a sport out of nothing. You know, we've created a sport out of, we saw some videos on the internet 20 years ago and now we're like, that's my business. I haven't just seen a gap in the market. I've created a market. And I've gone from like a very poor background and I went and traveled around the States because I got a work permit and I worked for, I think they paid us like $600 for an entire summer. It's fuck all. And
how did you afford that?
Well, they pay for your flights, they pay for accommodation, they feed you, and then it's supposed to be your pocket money. Like that's, So the second year and third year I didn't. I had a proper work visa, but that was my way of traveling because I didn't come from a wealthy family. I couldn't just go and buy an airline ticket. It had to be a deal. And then I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I just kind of did. And eventually I've ended up here. But like, it's all against adversity. I've not given up at any stage and I've just had to keep going. And I will not do the things that you're supposed to do in business. I will not price gouge. I will not make people redundant if I don't have to. They're on salaries, they're on proper wages, they've got all of the benefits that they need because otherwise why would they not just go and work somewhere else? And I've put so much time and energy into these kids and I want to give them, I want my guys, my full-timers. So I've got Jack who's worked for me for 16 years now. He's buying a house. So we're like, oh, we're going to give you a pay rise because we want you to be able to buy a better house. And that's what we do. Yeah, but they are brilliant. I've got the best workforce because they know that I look after them. That's important.
So what question do you wish somebody has asked that they haven't?
My big challenge for myself, and I don't know the answer to this yet, is I guess your last question. What do I want? Like if you take everything else away, if you just put me in the middle of somewhere with a bucket load of money, who am I? What do I want to do? Because I've spent 20 years being really reactive, doing stuff for other people, and like not having that many choices other than to just keep doing what I'm doing. And now I'm 42, turning 43. I've got a family. I love Tash. I love Poppy. But what do I want? What do I really want to do? I want to help people, but I'd also like to, have a nice, comfortable existence and spend as much time with my family as I can. And the two don't seem like you can't keep running a charity forever. The only way to make money running a charity is to take money out of the charity, and that takes money away from the charity. So that doesn't sit right with me. Like people running charities earning 100, 200 grand as a CEO. No, that's not what we do. So how do I make enough money to live a comfortable life in an ethical way that sits with my morals? And that's I guess, my challenge. And I haven't got an answer to that.
So you wouldn't just go buy a mansion somewhere?
I'd love to. I'd get bored though. Like my brain is so busy. I'd like to, I really enjoy the creative stuff. So something we're doing this year, we're going to make some more like, I want to get back on my podcast. I haven't recorded. Is it a year exactly? I was going to
ask you about that. Yep. I was like, I looked and I was like, he hasn't done this in a year. He needs to get back on that. It was pretty good. I enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you. I've got one in the can, and that I need to edit, and that was recorded a year ago today. That came up in my memories on social media. I was like, okay, I need to record that, and I want to do that. I want to do some more creative stuff. I want to showcase the guys and the kids that are coming up now, because some of them are insanely talented. But that will be a nice project for me because I'll be making a video with them to showcase them, and I really enjoy the filmmaking, and so I'd like to do more of that. I don't see myself as a filmmaker, but I am quite creative, so I'd like to do more of that, even just for my own soul.
Yeah. Well, what can we do then, just as a society or as regular people, to help you out in your endeavor and in this project?
It's easy, and I read this in Graham's eulogy. Like it's the old movie, isn't it? The Pay It Forward. If you just do something nice, it doesn't matter what it is. Just do something nice. Hold a door open for someone. Someone drops something, pick it up. Or if you're a little bit more, if you've got a little bit of money, do the Pay It Forward at the coffee shop. Buy someone a coffee. Say hello to someone. Just do something nice. And if everyone just does something nice, then it will make the world a little bit a better place. And on that, I've got a very good reason for doing this. It's something we haven't spoken about at all. And I know we're like an hour and a half in now, but
yeah, my bad. Go for it.
I've done a lot of work as a choreographer in film theatre, like big theatre productions, multi-million-pound productions. I've worked on Tony Award-winning shows, Olivier Award-winning shows, and it's just something that I kind of fell into. But the reason I fell into that is because I went for a job interview for a job that I was woefully unqualified and unprepared for, teaching physical skills at drama school. And it was off the back of Britain's Got Talent. They was like, hey, do you want to come and teach here? And I got there a little bit early, and I went and got a cup of coffee, and I was waiting for my interview. And going into the coffee shop, I held the door open for someone, because I just hold doors open for people because it's a nice thing to do. And this is like one of those stories that old people tell that is genuinely hand on heart true. I later discovered as I walked into the interview, the guy I held the door open for was the guy that interviewed me, right? So I had that job before I'd even sat down. Like he didn't care that I didn't have any experience teaching in higher education. He didn't care that like I learned and I did a good job and I worked there for 7 years. But that guy also retired from doing the choreography for the English National Opera, which is one of the biggest operatic production companies in the country. They got £16 million off of the Arts Council last year to fund their projects, So because I held the door open for that guy, not only did he give me a job, he then gave me a second job, which earned me tens of thousands of pounds over a number of years. And I traveled all over Europe with massive production companies. I've worked with people like Glenn Close. I'm trying to think of other people that the US audiences know, but massive stars, because I held a door open for the right guy, and that cost me nothing. Just be nice to people. Everyone is just nice. It opens doors. I know it's a bit of excuse the pun, but it does open doors. Just be nice. It costs nothing.
For any guys that are interested to see what else Brad has done or to dig a little bit more into his past, I have put his website down below. Pretty simple, bradwendes.com. He's done a lot more than we've been able to delve into. It's down there if you guys want it, or if you guys want to see what he's about and maybe help out him and his organization, because that would also be freaking phenomenal. If you get a spare second, go give us a rating or some feedback or share it, whatever. Or you know what, actually don't. It's spring. Go out there and go do something. Go be active. Try some parkour if you're up to that. I'm definitely not. I'm too old to try that stuff. I've also put our new website in our show notes, halfseriouspodcast.com, and then Tess at halfseriousllc.com. is the email address. If you guys want to be a guest, or if you know anybody that should be a guest, by all means, share my email address and that email address. For those of you that know my other email address, don't share that one. Come on, guys. All right, that's it. You guys have a freaking phenomenal week, and I will see you on the flip side.